Where I live is in the Pennines, in the South Pennines, and I'm very much surrounded by these hills and very aware of them. I've always, throughout my life, been inclined to walk over them, occasionally climb it, and yes, become very attached to it. So I have always kind of drawn it and been taking rubbings of it, castings of it as well, pouring plaster of Paris onto surfaces, into moulds, and therefore having blocks to then press clay into, pressing clay into the rocks itself, generally recording it. Hello, my name's Terry, and I'm an artist who's been leading this project on landmarks. I have been looking at the land for some time, and I've been recording it, painting it, drawing it, printing it, and pressing clay into it and recording it in many different ways that I can think of. And I did that for quite some time and collected a lot of evidence, and now I'm kind of moving away from source and have developed work that's more abstract in nature. And part of the recording was also to leave paper, very special paper, 400 grams heavy paper, big sheets of it that are like 150 by 120 centimetres in fields. Well, not just fields, but fields that were part of a quarry landscape, as it were. From these, I have left them in the, I've done a full cycle of a year now, so that for 3 months each season I left them there and then collected the remains and brought them back to the studio, and they're quite fragile. Obviously they've been out in the weather and snow and rain and everything, so I've then reassembled them like a jigsaw back onto another surface and glued them down. And then I am in the process now of looking at all 4 of them together and making them read together as a group. But it has, I think, informed my engagement with the landscape emotionally somehow, as well as it's been interesting to go back from time to time and realise that this piece of paper has been consumed by the landscape and the animals that live in it. I find that my work is about texture and about place and surface. All the work I do is evolved around that, and I especially like it going into 3 dimensions. My struggle to adapt to the hearing world has kind of made me engage again with physical making of my artwork, so that I find that the physical tactile processes of using clay and printmaking are kind of lend themselves to my way of thinking. So I've done a lot of research around the landmarks or scars that are in the landscape of the South Pennines, and this has led me to working a lot in quarries and where the scars have been made by people in the landscape, and they're evident everywhere. Some of them are rewilded, but they're everywhere. And kind of following that through, I've done a lot of research to do with the social history, but also with the geology and the wider kind of issues to do with quarrying and extraction. An important part of my process has been that I am profoundly deaf, and this has impacted quite a lot on my work, my process, because I find it quite difficult to engage with the art market and so on. But the funding has enabled me to focus my work and aim it at the fellow deaf people. So that I'm pleased about that I can now engage with a number of different centres and organisations like Hearing Links, who have promoted and supported me in this process. I recently, my work's moved on, and I'm still obsessed with these bowls, and the process has evolved from the sketches that I did, and during the course of doing the printmaking and collage and doing the all of that initial work, some of it directly from observation on site, but it's the sculpting of the land into these hollows that's fascinated me, and I find it quite visceral, quite bodily, and quite of the female form, and that is an important element to it for me. So this kind of, as I say, visceral connection occurred. And when I've been doing the paintings, I've been painting from these initial drawings and from the initial collages and prints to larger oil paintings. Now, these have evolved in the sense that I was wanting to make them more abstract and less representational, simply because I wanted to highlight the essence of what this was about this hollow shape, rather than be distracted by other elements that are in the landscape. I used them onto print, from print onto paintings, and that was quite opened a big door for me, because it meant I could see a way through to realising my vision of what I was trying to say about these places, these sculpted land, these landmarks that occur in this vicinity. So yes, as well as that, I was able to turn these small sketches, A4 size sketches and collages around, so that I was able to then think of them in terms of losing the horizon, losing that sense of a place, and as I say, focusing on the essence of it. So that now I've started developing a series whereby the bowl is actually on its side, and in the same way, the bowls that I am making, the actual physical ceramic bowls, have become more and more tilted. So some of them are actually vertical as well. So I think this is quite a fruitful process that I'm engaging in at the moment. The funding has been great because it's enabled me to put on 4 exhibitions that kind of engage with the public and with other artists as well, so that I've become aware of other artists who are involved in similar subject matter and who are producing some very, very interesting work. And I feel that I'm kind of more critically engaged now and becoming part of a whole body of artists, a whole genre of people who are working with the land, but not quite like the land artists of the 1980s who were, generally speaking, male artists who wanted to stamp their own ideas on the landscape, but these are kind of more sympathetically engaged with recording and understanding the land, and in a sense, though, you could still call it land art rather than landscape art. So I find it quite interesting, the artists that have kind of moved away from the pictorial and representational into the more abstract. So yeah, this has been a wonderful opportunity for me to do that, as well as to professionally engage with 4 important venues. The Arts Council funding was at a critically important junction in my professional practice because I was at a point where I was a bit directionless. I was producing work which was quite representational, and mainly because I felt that it would sell and be popular, and therefore I could carry on. But having the council grant enabled me to really look at the whole subject from a far more engaged and critically aware point of view.